Do you think that there's still an importance to staging a home?
I look at it in basically two silos. One is an emotional and one is a logistical.
This is about to be the most disappointing story. I think virtual staging is actually a really good option. It's important to stage your house to its best showing and its best potential. This next point you're about to make is going to be unearthly.
It's been shown over and over again that we can list homes and get a lot of money for it, and we don't have to spend thousands of dollars bringing a stager and dealing with all logistics.
Welcome back to Millennia Podcast, everybody.
So is staging still a thing? It is?
Actually, I have no idea what your take is on this.
Well, then why don't you ask me what my take is?
Do you think that there's still an importance to staging a home? Should we also talk about what staging is?
Well, that was going to be my question. Like, it depends on what you mean by staging. Like, are we talking, moving shit
like
around?
Vacant house.
Vacant house.
Okay,
and
there will be two parts. So one is a vacant home. I'm really thinking like staging companies, actually like setting up a vacant home to look like somebody lives there, like a little model home type. So that part of staging. And then there's the owner occupied still staging of what I did in Paoli, of going in and moving things around and reconfiguring. My answer to that one, that's an obvious yes. Of course you want to stage a home. There is home that is already being lived in. Yes, obviously you would want to have it show its best, and we can get into what that kind of staging looks like later. But in short, taking out clunky furniture and rearranging a few things. I spent a solid amount of time rearranging a book wall of shelves to make it like balanced and look more appealing and visually aesthetic in pictures to make it elevate the room. So there's stuff like that, but I think I was really thinking more along the lines of vacant home, already moved out. Do you stage it or do you keep it empty?
What do you think?
I asked you. I have an opinion, but I want to know what your opinion is.
So what is the purpose of staging?
To be able to show how the house can best be utilized. People view them differently. So there's the advantage of being able to walk into a blank canvas and having the buyer's imagination be able to see like where they would put their stuff and how they would configure the home. Whereas if it's already staged, then it's harder to envision what like your stuff would look like in there because there's already existing stuff there. There's two different points of it. I want to know what your opinion on it is.
I look at it in basically two silos. One is an emotional and one is a logistical. So yeah, you're absolutely right. A house that is staged, people can better get an idea of how to set up a house, ideally. That is a logistical consideration.
And there have been times where I've shown houses that it goes on what you just said. Pause.
You asked for my opinion about 5 times and now you're interrupting me while I am.
So you're gonna get to your next point next, because on that one, in your defense, I was in a home.
This by the way, this better be a damn good point. This better be something that's earth-shattering where I'm like, I sit back from this microphone, I'm like, wow, I never really considered it that way, Jen.
This next point you're about to make is going to be unearthly. So go ahead, make your next one. Then I'll go. No. Go ahead. And
so you have a logistical, which is like, how do we put things in the house? The other one is an emotional. You want to create an emotional connection to the property, and the better way to do that, instead of some stale, empty house, you have furniture in there. It's well appointed. There's flowers. There's books. There's something
some farmhouse chic.
So those are the two levers you can pull on. Good staging does both. That's what I consider staging to be in its purest form. There's also other things like virtual staging, and then there's just moving stuff around. But I do not want to go to those topics until you have had a chance to make this profound follow-up point to what I just said. The floor is yours.
It's literally like a 2-second thing. It was how one time I was in a house showing for a client.
Did I build it up too much, Jen?
You built it up way too much. This is about to be the most disappointing story. There are Jen stories, and then there's going to be this. All I was going to say is that I showed a place, this room.
That was staged, the end.
Shut up! Okay. All lived in. Regardless, I would have thought the room was so small and that nothing would have been able to fit in it had there not been anything in there. I would have been like, I honestly would have recommended, said, you're going to have a hard time making this room functional. But we were going in and I was like, this room is actually, I'm glad they have furniture in here because I wouldn't have thought that you could put this much in here.
Sure. Yeah. So
Did that blow you away, Seth?
No.
Did that completely just change your way of life and living as you know it?
The word that comes to my mind is footnote. It was a
That's why I tried to throw it in as a footnote, but no.
no. Well, I mean, you keep asking me for my opinion, and then you keep interrupting me. So, shoes on the other foot. The other side of this guy is when a house is furnished and you need to stage it. Let's talk about that for a second and how important that, because that is more applicable.
Yeah.
I have not hired a staging company in a very long time. A lot of times it's because I don't work in like ultra luxury, and I haven't sold a lot of homes that need it. So like sometimes if you have a house with a really wonky layout, you need that like logistical piece. Like how the hell do you set up anything in this house? Where does everything go? But most of the time when we talk about staging, at least in Philadelphia, now I was just away with a bunch of people from Canada, and they're in Toronto, like the city. And this is a thing even in Philadelphia, you got to stage the condo. You can't just have a condo sitting there. There's a lot of times you have to stage it. And
There's
so
a lot of that in Philadelphia.
there are a lot. That's what I mean. These people that I was with, they're agents, and they actually own warehouses with furniture because they stage so much that they've scaled it to a point where they own their own stuff.
It would make sense at that point.
Because
you especially in condos, like, and you start listing in condos and then you start getting multiple units within the same condos, like that does make logistical sense. You already have all the furniture to bring in and put in each one. So there was also talking about like wonky layouts and wanting to do that. There was the one that I had in Royersford. Really, so it was one with my investor client, did a flip. We already knew that the layout of the living room was going to be cause for concern. And so when we were doing one of our walkthroughs towards the end of the flip, before I was getting ready to list it, that was one time that I did advise him. Because like he'll have this like standard props for staging, like in kitchens and as like the flowers in the cookbook, it's all the same stuff. And I see it in every single one of the flips. And it's so fun to go and be like, oh yeah, that's the same thing.
Came out of the flippers catalog.
The one time that we actually did stage a house, and I did tell him like the living room is going to need to be staged here because it was so small in comparison. It was going to be difficult. We had stood there, we had multiple walkthroughs of like, how is somebody going to configure this room? And then we did figure it out, bought furniture, like Wayfair, used it for the house, and then we offered to sell the furniture with the house for an additional price to keep it there. I think they ended up selling it. His wife sold it on like Facebook Marketplace or something, and cool, whatever. Got his money back, served purpose, got the house sold. But that was a time where it was actually necessary, and I haven't run into too many times where I need to. But I think virtual staging is actually a really good option.
You do.
Rewind.
That was a big statement.
It was a very declarative statement. I'm going to contradict myself because something I did not like about virtual staging that happened last week. There was a house. I don't know if it popped up on any of your portals. I didn't even tell you about this yet. There's a house that these pictures looked really cool and went to go show it. Really excited. It was like a old barn. This house was from like 1800s. And this virtual staging made it look phenomenal. Go to the house. Oh my gosh, these floors weren't even supported with anything underneath of them. And like, you're going to fall through to the basement any second. There were holes from previous pellet stoves that were never even filled or capped when they were taken out. And this whole house was just not. And I was like, okay, so that doesn't show to what the pictures showed. And then it did its job to pull people in because even another friend of mine who I'm in the process of getting ready to buy also sent me that. And ironically enough, is also friends with the person I had shown it to. I said, oh, no, don't worry. She was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I said, don't worry. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Said I was already in it. It does not show anywhere close to what the pictures do. And the virtual staging did a great job at making it look good.
Virtual staging can absolutely outkick the coverage, whether it's just the fact that when you get there, there's nothing there, or the fact that it makes it look unbelievable. And then it's really like a piece of shit.
And that goes back to I've said before in previous episodes that I've told clients, you can do some editing and whatever from your pictures, but I don't want to over edit them to oversell it because I don't want the reaction and the impression somebody to get when they walk in the house to be disappointment. That's the worst thing.
Well, and you're also going to attract like somebody who's looking for something turnkey and amazingly beautiful, and they get there and it's not great. Like it's going to be really hard for you to get an offer from those people. So not to say you shouldn't make it look as attractive as possible, get as many people through the door, but I have actually never done virtual staging. I've never done the house that I bought with my wife. This house. It was virtually staged. Came in here, the thing was empty, completely cleared out. But if you go back and look at the old pictures, it looks pretty good.
Do you have to disclose in the MLS if it's virtually staged?
No, because it's not considered furniture and furnishings. I don't think is considered a misrepresentation of the property.
I like when agents do mention it There'll be
I
like
mean,
captions under the picture saying this is like virtually staged. Yada,
I'm
yada.
usually pretty good at. I'll come up to the front door with my client and be like, I'm pretty sure this one's virtually staged, but we'll see what we get in. And sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised. There was one over in Phoenixville, and I was joking. 2 showings before this one, I'm like, yeah, wait till this one. It's definitely virtually staged. I went in there, and the place was unbelievable. Like, she had to have been like an interior, or they had to have been an interior decorator. It was just I was like, I was joking, like, nobody furnishes their house like this. Like, here she is with like
Nobody lives this sterile and perfect.
perfect house. We ended up securing the property too, so it was good. But I will say also that forgetting about virtual staging, it is also, let's use the shit in your house. Most of the time, it is about getting rid of things. It is about creating walkways. I always say to people, not only is it just with the furniture, because people think staging, they think furniture. I just say every flat surface needs to be cleared off. That means floors, mantles, countertops, vanities, end tables, coffee tables, that type of thing. So that alone is a function of staging.
Well, and I was a visual merchandiser for 13 years, and specifically as my job title as visual merchandiser for probably half of that. I've had plenty of trainings of like where your eyes go, of utilizing space.
Do you mention that to your clients?
I really don't. I really should.
You should. You should.
I don't know why
that.
I don't.
Just that you've always been in real estate, but it's no. I have a background in whatever you just said.
Visual merchandising.
With virtual merchandising, which is translated really well to real estate,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I know how to make things look good and make people gravitate towards something.
Right. I know what the brain is naturally drawn to and
Definitely
how
put
your
that-
eyes travel. And
Put that in visual merchandiser.
I was doing something at the client's house in Paleo I was telling you about, where I was there for a couple hours, like staging the house, and the amount of detail I was putting into what you would think are very small and minor things. Those small minor things really add up to a full picture of the entire space.
Yeah, and listen, as a realtor, you don't have to be an interior decorator, but just a general, just a couple good rules. But then there's also the sales process of like selling your people. They'll be like, you got to take that down. You got to get rid of that. Get rid of that table.
They were the best because they said, do whatever you want with whatever you want.
Yeah.
I was moving pictures from like different spots in the houses and like they started already packing some of them up. I said, can I have?
Yeah.
I like that one over here better.
Yeah, no.
Here instead. And the space of this takes up this wall better than the other one, which is going to whatever.
How old were they? The 50s? 60s?
Well, in case I'm wrong. 50s maybe.
50s. Yeah, just say less. I have found with older...
Doesn't look a day over 35, though.
I have found with senior citizens, like 60s, 70s, 80s, they are less likely to move anything. They like this. This is the house, take it or leave it. That's more the mindset. I had a client who she had moved, basically relocated a $6,000 or 6,000 square foot house from the main line.
$6,000 house, holy moly.
She had taken most of the possessions in that house and shoved them into a 2,700 square foot townhouse. And so when I listed it, I mean, there was a lot of stuff in this house, like a lot of stuff. And I kept getting feedback. Like someone said, and it feels like a museum. Like I'm afraid to touch anything, but they were like very like cool taste. Wealthy people had the ability to we're in Europe, brought stuff back, like keepsakes, that type of stuff. And I said to my client, I'm like, listen, I'm getting feedback. There's too much stuff in the house. I'm like, do you mind, like, for showings, I take some of the stuff and just put it in the garage? Certain things, like there were chairs everywhere. There were like just these miscellaneous, I called them like miscellaneous chairs, like for sitting, I guess. And it was obvious that she brought them.
standing.
No, but just sitting like randomly, like next to the dining room, not in the dining room, but like right next to a doorway or like right outside the powder room. Or there was just like chairs everywhere that were like, I guess if like.
In case you ever get tired when you're walking through the house.
Yeah, or if the mood strikes to sit, I've got a chair for you anywhere within 3.5 feet.
May I interest you in a chair?
And not a comfortable chair either. So I asked her, I was like, listen.
Well, how often do you get the chairs in there?
Yeah, but those chairs are for sitting. Those are chairs that like we actually sit in.
What chair is not
meant
like
for sitting? It would be like a chair right here. The camera can't see it. It would be like if there was just a chair sitting here. It was like everything was in the way. I'll show you the listing. I'm not going to talk about it here, and she was like, listen, if they don't want the house because all my stuff is in it, then they don't have to buy it. And I stepped in it a little bit, but I was just like, listen, can I remove and literally there were 15 miscellaneous chairs on this first floor that I was like,
So
I will literally
peculiar.
show up early because I showed up and I accompanied all the showings. I said, I will take the chairs out very carefully and put them in the garage for every showing, but we really need to open up the floor space. And we eventually did sell it, but that was like, it was like 7 showings in a row. Everyone's like, oh my God, like I feel like it's claustrophobic, doesn't feel as big as and that's really the key. So the main thing that we talk about with our clients right now in 2024 is not.
A lot of stuff can block a lot of visibility of things that you may want to see.
It can block a lot of stuff, but also it can become overwhelming psychologically now this house that I had, like everything was very very purposefully placed. But then it's like the other side of it, that coin is there's just shit everywhere. You got piles of papers and it's a mess. That's a different thing. So I think for our purposes in 2024 outside of Philly, like hiring a staging company is very rare in the suburbs. If you're going into that luxury, that $1.5, $2, $5, $10 million property and it's empty for some reason, you should stage it.
Yeah.
People don't want to walk into an empty 7,000 square foot home. It's going to feel like it's abandoned. And that's a different psychological mix. But for the 35-year-old who's trying to buy a house, you don't really necessarily need to stage it.
Unless it's a wonky.
Weird. I actually do believe that flips. It's a good idea. I think
stage?
I do because it's not bad. I like that idea just because the house is new. And I think you can put stuff in there to really make it pop. And also, you can put stuff in there to hide shoddy work.
But I don't like.
I know, but if that's what people are doing, I know you don't like doing that, but you work with good flippers, though.
Yes.
Like you work with investors who actually flip well. But
Right.
if it's a strategy to.
And I won't work with flippers who do shoddy work.
Yeah. But anyway, I like staging. I'm pretty good at it. I know just because of all the experience I have with my buyers. We definitely know that Jen does not like things that are not in alignment. Not at all.
Yeah. That is a skill that I really understate that I don't know why I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You're telling the world here. That's good.
So for those who are willing to like declutter and move out some, because sometimes you do need to get rid of big furniture and 14 chairs or whatever. It's say, okay, that would be nice, but then where does it go?
Mm-hmm.
So what I had told my clients is, okay, so what space do you have? So you have the attic, which is like, you don't really need stuff, but they already have stuff in the attic. I said, okay, so this is why there's no such thing as too soon, but there is such thing as too late. One of the first things I probably advise you to do is start going through everything. Start going through all of your shit. Start getting rid of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to sell it, donate it, gift it, throw it out, whatever. Start going through and purging everything you don't need. Then you allow space into your house, into the storage areas. So clear out the stuff out of I always say start with the garage and your attic first, because then those will be cleared out for us to then put the excess stuff up there. And then they didn't really want to be bothered with having to take it back down again.
Yeah.
So they did end up getting a storage unit, which is another option, but say that's not really in your budget and that's not something you really want to do. Sometimes I'd advise it. Other times I just say start with your garage and your attic, get out the stuff and start clear out house. And then we have space to be able to be flexible with storing other things we don't need in regular visibility.
Closets, basements, garages. The buyer will forgive you if things are stacked there, stored there, as long as it's like organized and it's not just thrown into the garage. But that's where I usually tell if they don't want to do a storage unit and they're like, okay, you have a 2-car garage, take one of those spots, all the furniture, all the crates, everything you don't want, you take up one of those spots. And as long as it like looks organized, it'll be fine and the buyer will forgive you. But having this all like
and as a buyer's agent, when I'm going into a house that has that, where like everything is shoved into one side of a garage, I do tell them on the bright side, look, stuff can fit in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can store so many things here.
Or they're motivated. Half their shit's on their way out the door.
Yeah.
Like they're ready to move. They're definitely going to be selling this house.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll say, there's so much stuff that can fit in here. So you already know there's going to be plenty of more space for you. So it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. So you don't need to be an interior decorator to list a house. You don't need to hire a stager necessarily, at least not in our market. If you're in more urban areas, you definitely want to think about staging. That's just more of the way that things are done.
I think that the more the market gets corrected and the more of a market
it'll
we get
come
into,
back. It'll come
right
back.
now, as of today, it's not as pertinent.
Yeah.
In the hiring a staging company, I will always say I think it's important to stage your house to its best showing.
Yeah.
and its best potential. So that's one thing.
But it's been shown over and over again that we can list homes and get a lot of money for it, and we don't have to spend thousands of dollars bringing a stager and dealing with all logistics. It's right now it doesn't have as much of an effect. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
But you should ask your agent if that is something that should be part of your listing strategy.
That is true, because we don't know what market you're listening to this in, but outside of Philly, listen, we will stage for sure. I have 2 or 3 staging companies that I could call, but in the end, it's not necessarily going to
Make or break.
Make or break. There's just too much demand out there. So
And the return on the investment into it too.
That's right.
If you pay like a couple $1,000s to get this, or even on the furniture,
It's
are you even
probably
going to get
not
that
good.
back in your offer?
It's probably not going to move the needle. I don't know if you're going to get an extra $4 or $5 grand that you would probably spend to stage a regular house.
It's like I told my own clients before that they were going to put a new roof on before we listed it.
No.
I said, let's just wait out the market. Like, it wasn't actively leaking. I mean, if there was like, if it was damaged, that's one thing. It was old. I said, let's just wait out and see what the market says. We have all the information. We did a pre-listing inspection. We have it ready for them. And there was a lot of things that they wanted to do before we listed it. They wanted to update their entire bathroom and put in new flooring. I said,
No.
let's not. And then what we got for the house, I said, we got for the house the same that we would have gotten even if you had done all of that, but you would have been out that money and stress.
Yeah.
So it didn't make a difference
And
if you did it or not.
and staging is an extension of that. It's like the renovate. We've already talked about on this podcast. If you hadn't go back, the ROI on home improvements is probably one of our best episodes. I think it got the most traction out there because it's something everybody wants to know about. Staging is another thing. It's like kind of a subset. Same psychology though. Right now in 2024, redoing or staging a house is not necessarily something that you need to spend money on, which is great for you if you're looking to sell. So yeah, I think we've unpacked this.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.